Good evening, Mr. Spy fans, and welcome once again, and welcome back to our continuing look at the Mission Impossible film series. It's thanks to the very good, very kind people who support me on Patreon, people like Harry Patey and Jonathan Gaskins, that I get to do this. So thank you to you guys, and thanks to everyone who supports me on there for your continued patronage and support. And because of all of you folks, I'm finally getting well into the good Mission Impossible films. I was none too keen on installments 1 and 2, but I had a great time with 3, and indeed here with 4 as well, which drops the number from the title and instead adds a subtitle, Ghost Protocol. The film was released in 2011, 5 whole years after film 3, and as uncommon as it is for a 4th film in a series to kind of perfect the style and tone of a franchise, Ghost Protocol does just that.
Light the fuse.
I think it's a minor miracle that the film got made at all. Mission Impossible 3 made less money than its predecessors, and with just less than $400 million worldwide on a budget of $150 million, a profit was made, but it certainly seemed to indicate that things were winding down, and I think a large reason for this was Cruise himself. And yes, I'm talking about Cruise's public image again, but I think it's really important to understand in the context of these films. As I covered in my previous video, Mission Impossible 3 represented Cruise at his couch-jumping, closet-trapped, Riddlin-hating, Scientology-gushing public persona low. The guy has obviously had some good public persona coaching since then, though, as these days his whole reputation seems to be, oh wow, it's that actor who does all those incredible stunts, but back then in the mid-2000s, his reputation was really in the toilet. Between Impossible missions, he made 4 films, 1 drama, Lions for Lambs, 2 low, moderate, successful action films in Valkyrie and Night and Day, and a memorable, very funny cameo role in Tropic Thunder. Nothing from these films suggested that he would be in a position to return to the MI franchise and push it to new heights. And yet, he did just that by taking, I would say, a half a step back. This is the first MI film where I feel like I'm watching him actually lead an ensemble rather than just be off gallivanting by himself, and as a result of that, we spend much longer with characters besides him, and that's to the benefit of the movie.
Let's give you a few friends to play with.
But before we get into that some plot, the film opens with a super short sequence in which we see Till Schweiger? No. Jamie from Game of Thrones? No. Which one's this? Oh, right, yeah, Sawyer from Lost. Yeah, that guy. We see him assassinated by future Bond girl Leia Sadu, who picks up his bag and moves along. This is a super short sequence despite its potential to be a bigger action moment, and certainly the presence of a semi-recognizable name face in the part of this bloke lulls you into thinking that he's going to be a bigger part of the movie, so the fact that he is killed immediately is really cool and quite a nice hook into the film. And besides, the actual opening bit of action is really cool. Simon Pegg and Paula Patton breaking Tom Cruise out of a Russian prison while Ain't That a Kick in the Head plays. I absolutely love and adore this opening sequence, and I have to give immediate credit to the director, who, by the way, is one of the very best directors working in the medium of film today. The series continues its run of high-profile directors with the live-action movie debut of Pixar golden boy Brad Bird. Bird is a fantastic storyteller, and a history in animation is actually really beneficial to someone helming a big-budget actioner like this. I mean, everything is pre-planned and prepared in animation, with animatics and pre-visualization and such, and while these techniques are common practice in live-action movies and have been for decades, having someone like Bird on board who's so experienced with these tools and know how to use them to maximum effect, it means that we have a really polished, tight, and fantastically constructed bit of entertainment. More or less. I'll get into why later on. Back to the plot, anyway. So, despite there being plenty of scenes of characters talking about other characters and discussing motives and methods, ultimately things boil down to stopping a crazy man from nuking the world.
IMF now believes this man, Kurt Hendricks, is a nuclear extremist, codenamed Cobalt.
Which is fine, Lord knows the Bond series has had its fair share of crazy motivations, but my main problem with Ghost Protocol is that it lacks a really compelling, or even memorable main villain. I don't know if I remember what Jon Voight, Dougray Scott, or Philip Seymour Hoffman's villains wanted, but I remember each giving performances that were memorable, and they all felt like clear, big, bad villains for Cruise's Ethan Hunt to go up against. Here, I guess we have Michael Nyqvist as main villain Kurt Hendricks, who I know has been in notable films, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, for example, but I don't know him, and the film doesn't do much to make him terribly memorable. At one point, a character I kinda know but not really pulls off a mask to reveal another character I kinda know but not really, and I'm like, why is this a big deal? So even though I'm totally good with just boiling down the plot to a basic, stop the crazy terrorist guy, I do wish that they'd cast someone more memorable, or maybe even just ask the current actor to go bigger with it, written the character bigger. For better or for worse, I do have very clear memories of each of the main villains from the previous films in this series, but with Ghost Protocol, I watched this thing a few days ago, and I can't recall any memorable moments he had. But while the villain may not be up to par, Cruise and the team around him are for the most part really, really great. Simon Pegg's role has dramatically increased since the last film, and it's all for the better. I love Benji Dunn in this film. I'm glad they made the character a field agent, and Pegg is a delight in this part. Paula Patton is Jane Carter in the film, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed her in the part. She's witty, and she can kick ass really well too. Cruise's part in the film definitely feels toned down in favour of including more of his co-workers, which I don't have a problem with, but it just feels slightly jarring. Like, I'm pretty sure that Simon Pegg has more lines of dialogue throughout this entire film than Tom Cruise does, and in many ways it does feel like a winding down for Cruise. He plays it as a total professional veteran, and while he's dealing with some grief issues throughout the film regarding the supposed death of his wife from the previous film, he doesn't really get any weighty, emotionally dramatic scenes to play. Funnily enough, I found him very good in those scenes in the previous film, so while I think his turn in MI3 is his best performance in the series so far, he's still doing great all the action stuff. All that is really good here still, and he's completely lost the self-satisfied smugness that was in abundance in part 2, so he really does come across as kind of an actor humbled here. And maybe with good reason, as the biggest new addition to the cast is Jeremy Renner's William Brandt, who's clearly being set up here as a potential successor to the franchise, should this film prove to be Cruise's last. And indeed, the film's ending being the ambiguous thing that it is, I could totally envision them just dropping Cruise and then semi-rebooting with Renner had this film not been the great success that it was. Jeremy Renner is another actor I can't say I'm terribly fond of, but when this film was released in 2011, he was pretty much coming to the peak of his popularity with this. Like, he was still riding the wave of his Best Actor nomination for The Hurt Locker. He would go on to try and take over the Bourne franchise in 2012, and of course he's one of the 6 original Avengers in the movie series. While I certainly don't think he's a bad actor, he does have that kind of grown-in-a-lab action movie star quality about him. Like, maybe it's his management who are to blame, that they were spreading him so thinly throughout a variety of different projects rather than just picking like one project and one role and really honing in on that and perfecting that. While I think there's good tension between him and Cruise, and maybe his potential to take over the franchise from Cruise adds just a little bit of extra spice to their dynamic as the two are thrust together when the Impossible Mission Force Secretary, played by Tom Wilkinson, is killed. I'm sure those more in the know with this franchise will be able to tell me how Tom Wilkinson's IMF role is different to Lawrence Fishburne's, Anthony Hopkins, and Harry Czerny's, but each of these men have been sold as Cruise's superior in previous films, and I just wish they'd try sticking with one of them. It'd really help me keep up. James Bond always has M, and Ethan Hunt should always have someone. I mean, not that it really matters, I suppose, considering he's always bloody going rogue, and that's no different here, as Cruise must once again go off-grid. But hey, it feels like every spy movie these days has the character go off-remit at some point.
The President has initiated Ghost Protocol. The entire IMF has been disavowed.
The film is essentially broken into 3 big chunks by primary locations. So there's Moscow, Dubai, and Mumbai. Each one contains a specific heist involving disguises, gadgetry, and so on, and each one has something really cool and inventive to bring to the table. A couple of my favourites being Jeremy Renner being suspended in the air with magnets or something, and Pegg and Cruise using a projection screen to trick a Russian guard. That latter scene I particularly adore. It's so quiet and tense, and I'll be damned if every single bit of tech they use in this film doesn't malfunction at some point. Like, the IMF really need to better fund their tech department, seriously. But the scenes are great, and considering this was at a time when the Bond series was shying away from gadgetry and an over-reliance on tech, I really like seeing all these heists and action moments centered around some showcase piece of kit, and it leads to some incredibly inventive and fun moments. But without a doubt, the showcase sequence for the whole thing is Dubai, and of course the famous scene in which Tom Cruise hangs himself outside of the world's tallest building. It's hilarious watching the behind the scenes stuff with Cruise just kind of casually flipping around between takes outside this giant building. I mean, usually actors are nervous about stunts and need to put on an act to look confident and sell it. Here it's the other way around. Cruise had to act nervous when clearly he was having a great time up there. Of course, from this point on, it becomes a big selling point of the series that, oh wow, Tom Cruise is doing all these incredible, amazing stunts, and they are incredible and amazing. And I know that I've made jokes in the past about, oh yeah, it's Tom Cruise up a building again on a wire out of a plane, whatever, and I'll probably continue to make those jokes, but I don't want that to take away from the fact that what he's doing is really something very special, and it really does sell him as an action star. I believe him as an action star in this film. The whole 35 minutes, or however long we're in Dubai for, is so well constructed. Like, the plan, the action, I think Léa Seydoux actually makes of her a really fantastic villain here too. I knew she was in one of these films before Bond, but for some reason I thought it was the next one, the 5th installment. And while her part here is not very big, she plays a femme fatale assassin, and she plays it incredibly well. I wish she was in the film more, and heck, I wish that the Bond series had maybe even cast her in a similar role instead of making her the main Bond girl in Spectre. The weakest of the 3 segments would probably be Mumbai, and I admit to having a little bit of plan heist fatigue by that point of the film, and the fact that the climax is happening here, but it's just a fight around a big car park, and it doesn't feel terribly big or like things have escalated to this, and I had similar problems with the ending of 3, so I hope they sort out their climax problem for the next one. So wrapping things up here, I think I might actually finally be a Mission Impossible convert. This is such a weirdly eclectic film series, but where they've landed with this one seems to be just the right formula, and I think Cruise is at just the right level of maturity to be convincing and good in this part. The team they've assembled around him works and bounce off him really well, the action is suitably spectacular, and I just had a really great time. I think they've finally got the right tone, and they're consistent with it. If they can basically do this again, but with a better villain and a better climax, I might even end up loving this series. Hello, yes, I'd like the Tom Cruise duvet set, please, yes. Yes, it's a king-size duvet and 2 pillowcases with his face on it, is that right? Yep, sounds perfect, yeah. No, Cruise. Cruise, not Hanks, Cruise. Oh, so if you've enjoyed this review, please do subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on future spy movie reviews. You can also head over to my videos tab to find previous spy movie reviews, as well as plenty of videos about Bond films, Bond games, Bond books. And if you would like to check out my other social media pages, please do head below to find links to my Facebook page, my Twitter page, and my Patreon page if you would like to go one extra step in supporting this channel. Until next time, spy fans, so long for now. No, not Hiddleston, Cruise.